This is The Blockchain Show.
The Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies and promotes widespread adoption of cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
You're listening to episode number 41. On this week's episode, we feature an interview with Mike Prokop and Steve Goyne of Deloitte, who will talk about the professional services network, smart identity platform, and RegChain application.
Are you looking for an easy way to buy Bitcoin or Ether on a safe, secure platform? Coinbase is the easiest place to buy and sell digital currencies. Sign up today as a friend of the Blockchain Show, and if you buy or sell $100 of Bitcoin or more, you'll earn $10 of free Bitcoin for yourself and $10 of Bitcoin to support this show. Join now using the link in this episode's show notes at theblockchainshow.com.
And my name is Mike Prokop. I'm a managing director at Deloitte, and I help lead the energy and resources regulatory and operational risk practice here out of Houston. I've been focusing on blockchain for some time now, which has been rolling very well into my history of working at commodity exchanges, commodity brokerages, and various areas of regulatory compliance and regulatory risk. So the applications have been fantastic and easy to come through. Steve?
Yeah, so I'm Stephen Goyne. I'm a consultant with Deloitte in our energy and resources group. I sit within our commodities trading risk practice, and I lead at the staff level our blockchain community of practice. I joined the firm about a year ago after completing my MBA at Louisiana State.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I'm excited to hear about what Deloitte is doing with the blockchain space.
Well, thank you, Stephen. We appreciate you having us too. It's an exciting opportunity. Thank you. This is just another chapter, if you will, and a very exciting chapter of our history right now of coming out into the marketplace with our clients. And we talk about doing this with our clients. We're now finding a whole lot of new clients, given blockchain and all that is coming about around it. There is a great need for information from the simplest terms out there to we have people coming to us that have looking at this for 3 or 4 years now and perfecting certain operational flows, things that they need help from that standpoint. So we're seeing a wide array of various expertise levels and technologies at our client level. So it is an exciting time, and I will say the touch on this and the exposure we're getting is exponentially growing, and our range of products as well. Every day is a new day, and it's a pretty exciting day because there's always a new challenge to face.
So you really haven't had to sell the blockchain technology. Customers have been asking for it and approaching you guys, or clients have been asking for it?
It's interesting. You can go and walk into one of the largest energy firms in the world, and you may have a CEO sitting in front of you. You may have an operations manager that is responsible for making sure that, accounting, pieces of paper get filed every day, something like that. But from every level, from the top to bottom and in between, there is a very, very hungry need, if you will, for blockchain information. And what it's really coming about from is people hear about it, and many times, because there are so many people out there that are speaking to it and appearing to be expert in the field, they don't want to speak up and let on that, hey, you know what, I don't think I know quite as much as I should, so I'm not going to raise my hand. I'm not going to ask that question in the room. And then again, you run into that wide gamut, that wide array of, you'll have that person that, we can put at ease and have them ask that simple question to the person that asks us this extremely challenging question around, anything from different languages that are being used, different platforms that are being used, new use cases, because they've had a very extensive history. And so again, it's a challenge every day to, address every question that comes to our way, from the easiest to the hardest. But
what are some
very enjoyable.
What are some of the easy questions you're getting?
Literally, what does blockchain mean? What is a block?
What is a block?
Where is the chain? Go ahead, Steve. I'll
Yeah.
give you a chance to.
Sorry about that. Could you answer those?
So let me just clarify. So do you want me to answer what a block is, or do you want me to answer some easy questions we're getting?
Yeah. So sorry about that. Just there must be a little bit of delay in our conversation, but if you could just answer like what is a block?
Yeah. So what I would say is it's basically a snapshot of a time interval that captures the transactions that have happened over that specific time interval. And so oftentimes, depending on the level of the person that you're speaking with in an organization, either that will resonate with them directly or they'll say, come again, put in layman's terms, please. So it's a broad array of responses for even an answer for someone like yourself and us that operate in this space every day. It's all there's a tremendous amount of misconception, and it's due to the abstract nature of the technology.
Yeah, and so what are the more difficult questions?
Today, I'd say that some senior executives aren't really concerned with the deep technical or architectural aspects of a given technology. What they want is a clear and value proposition. And so obviously from my perspective, likely your perspective, there's a clear value proposition. It's about a distributed world, an open architecture. Those sorts of things to us are very favorable. But for the types of folks that we speak with, it's not necessarily intuitive. So that can be a difficult question. It's what is the clear, direct value proposition, and how can we articulate that in a very simple and concise way? Oftentimes, it's about going above and beyond the individual that you're speaking with, and so they need to be able to articulate it to other folks as well, so that they can sort of socialize that within business.
What are the benefits of the distributed architecture that tech people want to see, and then how do you then present the value proposition to CEOs or whoever you're speaking to at a company?
So I would say that the value proposition is multifaceted. So I think the most obvious for many folks is that there are a lot of process efficiency gains to be had, but there's also benefits on the cybersecurity side. So if you think about the types of entities that Mike and I are primarily speaking with, it's folks that are trading commodities. So they have a very complex systems landscape. It's a very complex processes just to manage risk, just to be able to execute transactions with their counterparties. Keep in mind, often they have thousands of counterparties. And so anything that's going to allow them to streamline processes, add in resiliency and accuracy to their existing systems landscape, they're very interested in. So it's up to us to really distill that down into the key points that matter the most. And blockchain overall comes across often as a very abstract concept, but it doesn't have to be.
The businesses are really looking at blockchain and trying to figure out ways to integrate it. What are the big sectors maybe that have found the most use for it in your experience?
So we deal with all sectors. And obviously I think what we've seen mostly is it's coming out of the financial services side. And that's maybe more broad than just sectors. That's an entire industry. Mm-hmm. That's where it's all sort of coming from. And I think that's partially out of fear of disruption, and then also they can view it as an opportunity. For many of the institutions, their core business is transactions processing. And so this is obviously a brand new model for how that can be executed in the marketplace. But it's maybe where it began in terms of timeline. Since its inception, really, we've seen it across multiple industries. So that's life sciences and healthcare, that's consumer products, it's in the public sector, it's obviously in media and technology, and of course, there's great interest in our realm, which is energy.
Before we started the show, you talked a little bit about how it kind of started with a 1 week long project or just, playing around with blockchain, and then it just escalated really quickly from there. Can we maybe take a step back to that and tell me a little bit about that, how it started, and then how it just exploded and how it continues to explode?
Yeah, I think that, so it began really with us identifying it as something that is definitely worth the time to research, to fully understand, and then also try to have a forward-looking perspective and try to determine where we think it might go. So we just initially started as saying, what is the implication of this innovation or this disruption for our business and our client's business? And we have a responsibility to identify those ahead of time. Now, from there, we began having conversations with folks who were very interested in this. So it was more of the market pulling us to help them understand and wrap their brains around what it means for their business. So from there, we've had many conversations, I'll say dozens of conversations around this. That's, in the energy industry, we run the full gambit from oil and gas all the way across power and utilities. We've had conversations with folks that sit in all of those different sectors. And like I say, it's been mostly a market pull. It's not, we're not having to initiate the conversations. We're being pulled into these conversations.
And another thing I would add to that point is the conversations take on a whole new realm, if you will, probably a little bit different than some of the other folks are having in the industry right now. And given the fact that, here we are in Deloitte with over 200,000 global employees. Many of these folks have come in from various industries that they currently work in now as consultants and technologists, that they're able to apply their real-world experience that they've had over the years now to, a new technology and a new offering. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is when we go into these meetings, even when we go in and do, we refer to it as our Blockchain 101 presentation to everything from C-suites to operational folks. We don't just describe what it is and how it came to be, that is blockchain. We also leave them with real examples of potentially they could utilize this type of technology and really have an impact on their business. And I think, Steve was talking earlier about the commodity trading space that we find ourselves sitting in many times here. That is a business that's been in existence well over 150 years. It's something that, men used to stand in the streets of Chicago and shout, prices for cotton outside of buildings with top hats. And now we're talking about blockchain technology in the cloud and these different things. And if you look at the big timeline of human existence, it's an amazing advancement in such a short period of time, and it's exponentially growing. What we're able to do, though, and it sounds daunting when you start talking again to folks at a company that, this could be cloud-based, it could be something we put in another environment we can host, et cetera. When you get right down to it, we can help them process invoices using blockchain. We can help them with their accounts receivable, accounts payable issues. But we can also go into that commodity trading space, which still, in many regards, is a very human and interactive process to this day, and begin to address a lot of the more mundane tasks that humans still do on a daily basis that, unfortunately, humans make mistakes. And so there are inefficiencies and there are things that can, truly hurt a corporation. So it's not just a cost reduction type message that we bring. It's an efficiency message. And it's something that, once again, if you break through inefficiencies, you allow firm to operate potentially at the next level to enable them to grow even more. So that's the exciting thing about it. When they get that realization that this can really push them to the next level, they really get after it. It's great.
Do you consider most of the benefits of blockchain to be like just business improvements, or are there places where it's really revolutionizing the way business is done entirely?
So I think it's both, and I'm going to say that only because the quick fix, if you will, and the quicker application of the blockchain technology is just in that operational efficiencies. You asked Steve earlier about some of the tough questions we get asked. Yeah. Some are, we're meeting with a firm this evening that, wants to get together with them and put a proposal together for mapping out a 10-year business strategy with them. Literally sit down, over the course of a number of weeks and months to figure out where their business is going to go in the innovation space, and particularly in blockchain. This particular company is energy related. I can't get too close to where they go, but I'd be identifying them. But they rely on the vibrance of the energy industry in order to survive themselves, and they need to be able to come along with innovations that are happening now in energy and other industries as well, in order to stay successful and ahead of the game as far as it goes with their competitors. So we're excited about that, and that's something that helps us even improve more. But I think overall it helps the industry. And again, as we take on these different challenges with our clients, as a firm, and even as large as we are, we all benefit. I mentioned earlier that I represent energy and resources in something we call Blockchain Fellows Program here at Deloitte. There's a representative for each one of our industry pillars that Steve was naming earlier. And we meet regularly in our community of practice to share the experiences and the observations we are both delivering and we are receiving from our clients. And, in the big space of things, something that has a very clear application, take, for example, it could be a know your customer type application in energy, can be applied to another industry. It could be something wrapped around insurance. Insurance is making strides in blockchain now. So that's what really helps this grow, is because it does have wide application. It's not something that's, cubbyholed into just a certain space in a certain area. So I expect this to even more really active and really grow.
Well, you had mentioned that you're doing a 10-year plan. How do you kind of define the technological landscape in 10 years? What's going on with bioinformatics and AI and blockchain and Internet of Things? How I think a real good benefit is going to be when you combine these different subsets together. So, what do you kind of see as the landscape in 10 years, and what do you recommend to if you're doing these 10-year plans? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think you're really hitting the nail on the head, and what you're really getting at is saying there's a lot of innovations out there right now that are more coming. Some of them are here. Some of them will change the way that we do business and live our lives, probably in the next 10 years or shorter. And, blockchain being one of them, IoT, as you mentioned, cognitive technologies. And so the intersection of those is extremely important. And so the way that those technologies can converge just sort of outside of an organizational context should be mirrored within the organization. So when you devise a strategy, you shouldn't do so purely around just blockchain. You should consider blockchain in the context of a quantum computing and IoT and a cognitive technology type of a world all together. So it's all about the strategy that wraps all those things into one, as opposed to thinking about any of those innovations individually.
And I think, Steve, too, expanding upon it for just a moment, when we go into something like this, it's very important for us, while we'll be meeting with the CEO of this corporation tonight, as you advance through this, you actually have to bring in pretty much all of the different areas of that company together and have them part of that strategy. In many cases, decisions are made in C-suites and then trickle down through a corporation. This is something that we find very often coming from the bottom up, where the operational folks, again, not to demean them, but that's really where the boots hit the ground, are very aware and live it every day of the operational inefficiencies and the operational, blocks, if you will, that are inhibiting a corporation from advancing and becoming more successful. So integrating all of those different areas of a company, having each one have a voice, but also having each one know what is expected of them and be a part of them is a very important part of this. And I think it's really then to get everybody comfortable and wrapped around as we, I think as a world, move toward a truly digital economy. How do we then move our business forward in addressing that and participate. So it's one of those where we very clearly have a message of it's important to lead and not be left behind.
One of the products that I saw a video on was the Deloitte digital identity system. I saw a brief 3-minute video on it. It looked pretty cool. There's a few different competing companies. I guess Reuters is doing something, and then Uport has identity. How does blockchain help with identity management, and why is it such a big problem that everybody's trying to solve?
Well, so I think to answer the first question around how does it help with identity management, well, one of the lines in that video that you've watched is that identity is broken. The whole idea of different enterprises and maybe regulatory entities all housing their own record of the truth that is someone's identity, or having a regulator having to sign off as to whether you can drive a car, enter into different countries, buy certain types of products. All that is done in a very siloed way, and so I think blockchain opens up that architecture, but it doesn't open it up to where it's complete transparency. So there are models in which you can optimize transparency. One of the ideas of digital identity is that you can create various personas. And so I may have one persona that I use to visit, say, a doctor, and they can have access to my healthcare records. I have a different set of data points that will represent my persona that I would present to someone when I want to buy a car, or when I get a new driver's license, or when I'm traveling, and things like that. So I think the idea of having digital identity and then beneath that having various personas will allow us to better manage the levels of transparency that we're giving to the people that we do business with and transact with on a daily basis. Steve, what was your second question? I'm sorry,
I forget. It's always. I think let's see. What did I ask? I asked, how can blockchain? Why is it such a difficult question? I think why is it so important, and why isn't it? Why haven't we come up with a solution already? And how does blockchain solve it? Why is it such a? Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's really something that we haven't put a lot of investment and thought into. That's not Deloitte. That is, let's say, just the global business community. I think that prior to this breakthrough technology, and keep in mind, obviously this is not something that the business community has driven. And I think it all started in the public blockchain space. It all started there, and the technology was really proved there. And so I think the business community is, they have an idea of this is what we're in the business of making money. We're not in the business of thinking deeply about things like how, on a global scale, is identity managed. But I don't think that the business community has much of a choice now. In other words, blockchain has been somewhat like the genie being let out of a bottle. So now it's businesses sort of have a mandate to react, or like Mike said, be left behind. So I think digital identity has been a question that the burden of managing that has largely been on the public. And I don't think the public is really willing to accept that anymore. I think that businesses have an opportunity to create a brand new and much improved customer experience if they can provide this advanced digital identity management that blockchain has to offer.
Is there a lot of pushback with the businesses that you're approaching, or is there, they've just kind of accepted that, they will have to have some sort of digital identity management system in place? And then how do you plan that out in the timeline? So if you're discussing strategy with, folks at a business, say you have to have everything in place by X date, or because not all of this stuff is going to be ready. There's a little bit of chicken and egg problem with different technologies. How are you guys advising those sorts of issues where maybe you could pay your taxes with a public blockchain or something like that, but until every single transaction is on a blockchain, if that were to happen, it would make things super simple. I think I'm kind of jumping around a little bit too much here.
It's fine. I can answer some of that and speak to some of that, but I'll start with the ultimate consulting answer, which is it depends. But it definitely depends on the type of business that you're speaking with. I'll say from the strategic perspective, there are businesses out there who it's very important that they try to lead in this space, and for others, it's important that they follow. In other words, it's not a big strategic risk. They're not at risk of having major disruption of current business model, and so it really depends. I think the question is when does a critical mass take place, right? And I don't think Deloitte has the answer. I don't think anyone has the answer as to exactly when that's going to take place in the enterprise context. Mm-hmm. For when there's going to be some ubiquitous identity management blockchain out there or any other type of technology, in my opinion, that is a shared record across nearly all enterprises. That can happen at an individual industry level, perhaps maybe in the financial services realm, or maybe even the public sector. But it's no one knows exactly when that critical mass is going to be reached. So the question is where's the tipping point? And the tipping point is really whenever we have all of the parties that are necessary to create the minimum viable ecosystem. So regulators have a role to play, and really the world leaders in all industries have a role to play as well. So I don't know we're going to get there. I think if we were going to put a hard time on it, I probably wouldn't want to do that today, but I would say that
you don't have to if you don't want to.
That time interval has definitely shortened during the period of time that we have been looking at this technology. I'll say that.
Yeah, I think so. And Steve, too, I think the message that we are to deliver with our clients is, they are in the driver's seat. When we first started doing this years ago, they very much felt they were the passenger seat. The way we have put them in the driver's seat is they have the ability, they being these large energy firms that we're focusing on, but of course it works in any industry, to speed up or manage the pace at which this technology is growing. And they do that by putting together consortiums of other firms that look to a common end to create a practice or a process that all contribute to, anticipate in, to perfect, and then go ahead and enable and implement. We actually help firms do that, to participate in consortiums. You can imagine the more cooks you get in that kitchen, it gets pretty busy, but that is manageable. And when they start doing that, then they almost have to force others to come along. And let me give you an example. So if there's a consortium of oil companies that want to do a transaction, a blockchain transaction, pilot program where they're moving a cargo of oil across a body of water. Well, it seems, not going to be enough. We have something that's a quantity and a quality, and it's in a ship and it's moving from point A to point B. Okay, great. Well, the truth about that is it is a very, very, very complex process that involves regulators, government environmental agencies, inspectors along the way of quality, quantity, and everything else that goes along with it. Then you're talking about dock workers and all these different firms that have to participate in order to make something like this successful. And we've actually experienced in one of these where, and it was a great fear of ours going into it, that these smaller firms, say the dock workers, first of all, you would not expect them to be very advanced in their technology abilities and things like that. But certainly expected them to be apprehensive and, fear of the unknown, if you will, from these big companies coming in and basically dictating to them, they better get on board. Well, they were actually some of the most aggressive participants, these smaller firms, because, again, it was one of those things where they saw literally the train leaving without them if they didn't. So they put people into it, they put time into it, asked the best questions, and really helps one of these things to get proved out. Again, apply it to any industry. We see very much the same thing. When we talk about the exponential growth of the application of technology like this, it really does come from these firms that are innovative in scope, direction, and willing to work with their partners in industry, if you will, to help this thing move forward. And we're seeing great strides just from that area.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add on to that, just one of the things Mike mentioned, that to implement this sort of a technology, it really takes the willingness of businesses to collaborate in a way that they've never really done before. So I think it's something that's talked about in business schools, maybe competition. That's kind of what this is. So this is requiring you to go into a room with people that you've been competing with for decades and to figure out a way that you mutually realize some benefit. And so I think that's a great thing. I think certainly it's amazing that those types of conversations are being driven by a technology. But I think that's a really powerful thing too as we move again towards a more open world.
You paid a little homage to like the private blockchain, but what you're really talking about is consortiums or I'm sorry, you paid homage to the public blockchain. There are people who think that like blockchain without Bitcoin is just a database. I suppose, I certainly don't subscribe to that opinion. Could you maybe answer that question of, blockchain without Bitcoin is just a database?
Well,
sorry.
It's fine. No. I think opinions are going to vary widely on that. I would venture to say the majority of people that make that comment are already very pessimistic on Bitcoin itself. But what I'll say is that blockchain really is a combination of technologies that already exist independently. But when combined, they're a very powerful thing, and they create a very unique value proposition. So to say that it is just a database is a really pessimistic view of what it makes possible. So I would not agree with that statement that blockchain without Bitcoin is just a database. Yeah. I think that there are going to be applications that come about very soon via some of the consortiums that we're all aware of, whether it's Enterprise Ethereum Alliance or various others. And things are going to come out of that are at scale, that exist in the business community, that are unprecedented. That's my belief. I think Mike shares that belief, and many of the folks that have dug very deeply into blockchain understand that this is not something that really is coming. I think it's something that's here.
Are there any particular organizations like the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance or maybe Hyperledger that you lean towards at Deloitte? Are you building your own? Is there specific ones that are good for certain applications? You talk about like the energy market. Are you using Quorum with that at all? Where seems more built for JP Morgan's financial stuff. But are there any particular instantiations of the private consortium model that you guys like or are making?
So at this point, we are platform agnostic. We have worked across multiple different blockchain platforms. We have a very large ecosystem of folks that we collaborate with. So that's, thought leaders and innovators. We've done work with the World Economic Forum, the Chamber of Digital Commerce, the MIT Media Lab. We've collaborated and built proofs of concept on Ethereum. We've done Hyperledger. We work with IBM, work with R3. We have partnerships with Ripple, BlockCypher, Symbiont. We have a tremendous ecosystem. I mean, given the footprint of Deloitte and the fact that we work across all industries on a global basis, and given where we are and where we believe we are with the life cycle of this technology, we are open to relationships across a great breadth of platforms, entities, so on and so forth. So just to address specifically the platform question, it's always going to be fit for purpose. It's always going to depend on what is it exactly that we're trying to accomplish. It goes back to that value proposition question. If we're trying to focus purely on efficiency and accuracy, it may be one platform. If instead we're trying to focus on resiliency, cyber resiliency, then we're going to focus on a different type of platform. And so it's very fit for purpose at this point. We don't see a clear winner. There may be one in the future. There will likely be brand new platforms that come out that are very innovative, much more secure, much more efficient. I think we're very early on in the life cycle.
You mentioned different fits for different applications. You mainly work with the energy sector. What sort of experiments are they running now? What sort of experiments are you running now in the energy sector?
Well, we mentioned one, which was, actual delivery. There, potentially we have discussions around putting that into for example, oil or natural gas pipeline delivery domestically in the United States. We have opportunities in the public utility space and wholesale power generation space. And it's not just operational. It has the opportunity for regulatory reporting directly. Deloitte Republic about something we've developed called RegChain, which actually gives us the opportunity to implement a solution with our clients that allows them to directly send information to regulators. And they could be domestic regulators here in the United States. It's been proven a number of times in Europe and Asia so far. So we're excited about that, and that takes a great burden off a number of folks that, in many ways, it's a very manual process, again, of going through, it could be monthly records or daily records of activities that have to be consolidated into a centralized report. Something like that can be implemented through blockchain technology. That makes great strides, and also makes the whole reporting process to the regulators very efficient, but also very correct, if you will. It's the need for reconciliation at that point is cut down dramatically. So, when you I think you can see applications of this across various industries, but those seem to be the things that are right now being talked about the most of. Those types of physical deliveries of commodity. And then, of course, if you will, still kind of the shiny object on the top of the mountain everybody's after is always, I hate to say, but, the financial services industry is coming this way, is putting together a trading platform and a way to actually transact things that are done on, potentially commodity exchanges or bespoke over, phone systems with brokers and things like that. We have that be married to a blockchain technology that would allow efficiencies in price reporting, data sharing, market intelligence, market transparency, a number of different things. And we've seen the number of startup companies in the space increase dramatically over the last 2 years. With that, Steve was making reference to the amount of investment that's been in this space for some time is actually spiked. We have seen it grow gradually, but it seems that there are a number of smaller firms that are trying to make various footprints in certain markets with a limited scope of expertise they may have, and they're hoping somehow this all comes together. We have some approach us to try to partner up with us and things like that, so we have to be very careful about that. But the clients that we're serving as well as we help them kind of in the bigger scope of things, are inundated with some of these folks by the reach they're currently doing. So, we have to hope that there's not too much hitting the market, that the clear message gets washed out. But I think again, from our history of helping firms first understand what blockchain is, then understanding how to implement it, perhaps in even the simplest of terms, get their company used to it, get them comfortable with it, and then go from there, both internally and then eventually externally as they reach out to their counterparties and benefits or associates or clients in the market, and things of that nature. Then you know what? It actually makes a smoother transition of technology from something that's obviously much more manual in scope to something that's eventually going to be something very much less manual and very automatic, very quick. That I think right now, as we move to that digital economy referred before, is something that's going to happen. As Steve was saying, even a lot quicker than we had ever imagined before, just because of the adoption rate we're seeing right now.
Yeah, you had mentioned, some sort of trading platform where, commodities or stocks or whatever could be traded. It's such like a really good application of the technology because of the way things are done now. If you were to own a stock or whatever, you don't actually own the stock. You have a brokerage firm that, owns the stock, has, the rights to vote for it. They may, send that to you or allow you to proxy it. But, and it takes, 3 days for it to settle. With blockchain, you can really have the transaction be the settlement. And that's really one of the great benefits of the technology, where there's not a separation. You see it with like energy credits, maybe. That's one of the things where maybe companies will try to both at the same time sell the credit as well as report the credit. Because, with blockchain, you could say you're either, reporting that you have that credit or you have, sold that credit. But with the way laws are written right now, you can kind of get away with doing both.
Right.
Yeah, I think, for energy credits across both the power side and the oil and gas side, the things that have tried to be done there are very imperfect systems. So there's been fraud around these types of things. There's been dual reporting, like you're alluding to here, and certainly that's something that we think blockchain can come in and create a more perfect system.
I always talk about.
I guess
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, Steve, let me go, if I could, just maybe full circle on something we were talking about throughout this. And you were talking about the inefficiencies of currently some of the firm that takes 3 days to clear something, that type of thing.
Yeah.
I always believe in learning history, so let's look back maybe to the mid-'70s when something that still exists today called the DTCC, or Depository Trust and Credit Corporation, was created as a nonprofit entity by a consortium of banks. And there's that consortium word again. This has been done before, and it was led by a large number of major banks in New York. Because the New York Stock Exchange at the time had hit a glass ceiling of about 10 million shares a day that their system in its form back then could handle. They literally had runners running up and down Wall Street with stacks of papers, and heaven forbid it was a windy day. But that's how things got into systems, and banks transferred paper, as they called it, literally between themselves. Well, you started to get into the era of the green screens. And that enabled communication between the banks and these clearinghouses then to share data. And with a central clearing and settlements entity such as DTCC, they were then able to send these into one centralized location rather than going from participant to participant, and they immediately blasted through that 10 million share system. So I think we're on that cusp of reality right now, where these consortia come together. We're seeing, as you were talking about, these different holdbacks, and maybe it's not just in securities, but it's in, accounts payable and receivables again. That may take a week or 42 days or something, to actually go through a clearing cycle. It can be done very quickly, and it can be done even more accurately than it's ever been done before. And I think that this is what the firms are waking up to, and really what's getting them to decide on future investments in this area, which they're doing right now.
Yeah, and so just to add one part or one perspective there as well, I think there are a few things that are really driving us towards the broad acceptance. One of those being the fact that there's a lot of benefit to be had from a consortium model, which there's already precedent for, but I think also the majority of the commentary that's come out of regulators as of late has been very bullish on this type of a technology. I think we see regulators that are going to Congress and asking for funding around this type of a technology, and they say that they view it as an enabler to make more effective, efficient regulations. And also, I think just in general, the systems landscape that you'll see among market participants in the energy sector, you see a lot of commonalities across multiple entities. What you see is an ecosystem of systems that have been built up over time, invested in incrementally. So you have core systems with a lot of bolt-on systems that are stuck to them. At some point, what's going to happen is there's going to be this major turning point where many firms are deciding to invest in a brand new way of thinking about how they use systems to enable business. And so blockchain may be the key innovation that can push us sort of over that hump. So it's a few things, really, I think. Things are great. I mean, it's all of these things are true, and all things are very bullish, and there are questions that are open, but I think there's reason for optimism.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of reasons for optimism. The space is growing so quickly, as you mentioned, really exponential growth. I think that there's reasons for public blockchains, and there's reasons for private blockchains, and some sort of hybrid blockchains, and it's just a technology that can't really be contained. And I think maybe there's governments that have tried to contain it a little bit, and it's not possible. There's lots of uses for it. So
better to embrace at this point, I feel.
Yeah,
yes.
And you think most these companies that you talk to, they're not only just embracing it, they're like leading the way. They're leading the charge, huh?
Yeah. Again, it's the scope of the corporation, obviously their ability to innovate. But yeah, most certainly, and it's the forward-looking folks, and they feel they need to be in the driver's seat to lead rather than be told how to come along. Yes.
You had mentioned earlier that the big change is kind of going from top down to bottom up, and I think that's kind of through the course of history, that's kind of how it's going. How bottom up is it getting with blockchain? How much of just the general organization stuff is going that way?
Well, it's interesting because when we were starting a lot of our interaction with our clients, it was the COO, the CEO, the CIOs having us come in and have a discussion. Now we're in some cases we're introducing operations groups to their CEO that they've never met before. Because we are hearing it from both ends, and the two ends nearly do they meet. So, it's that message and communication that ends up bringing a corporation, to the forefront of this technology, because they truly do understand not only the risks and the investment that are involved in doing something like this, but also the efficiencies and the possible processes that can actually make them step out and be a bigger and better company and a better competitor in whatever space they may be in.
And I think the root of that is a trend that is not just specific to blockchain. I think it's what we're starting to see with the technology landscape and the pace of change and how quickly innovations and disruptions are come about. I think it's where traditionally you've seen the decision making be centralized at the top level. You're starting to see where investments need to be made quickly or strategic decisions need to be made so quickly that people that work on the front lines in operations are going to have a much larger role in the types of investments and the timing of investments going forward. So that's the reason I think that this innovation is also seeing increased collaboration internally within large enterprises.
I get kind of a weird question. So I think that a lot of the decisions, as far as like IT goes, aren't really made internally anymore. They're kind of made by like the Googles and the Apple, because that's the technology that people bring with them to work. Why isn't Google and Apple really involved at all in blockchain? Have they put so much money into, like Apple Pay and things like that? Or is it just kind of like they turned a blind eye to it, or do you have no idea?
Well, so both of them are likely clients of ours. So I will probably defer to Mike if he'd like to comment on that. I think that, this is not the type of technology that anyone can afford to turn a blind eye to. And so whether there are questions when making investment decisions as whether time matters. So is there value in being a first mover in the blockchain space? People are going to form their own opinions on that and then act accordingly. So I don't know if they have completely ignored this, or I know that there's nothing out in the public space necessarily around their attention to this. I think historically, if I remember correctly, Apple has denied some trade of cryptocurrencies or cryptocurrency apps to be on the App Store and things like that. I think they've evolved on that issue. But I don't think that it's something that any large technology organization is turning a blind eye to or can afford to turn a blind eye to.
And I think, Steve, your observations, some of these companies have been suspiciously silent. Again, learning from history tells me that some of the largest corporations that are, very, very suspiciously silent to a new technology are actually the ones that come out with the biggest investments. So I have no knowledge of what they in particular are doing. But it's always one of those never discount those types of firms. It's the reason why so many people now have iPhones and, Samsung is where it is, or vice versa in various applications, or why some firms use, Windows as opposed to Apple. It's a race to technology, and it's how these firms go and try to innovate and embrace it. At some point there will be a clear winner. We never know who that might be until things advance. But I would definitely rest assured that they are definitely looking at it right now and probably planning vast amounts of innovative invest around it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what, like an Amazon or a Google or a Apple could do with, or what they will end up doing. As you said, they're kind of silent right now. Mm-hmm. Microsoft isn't silent. What do you think about their blockchain as a service type offerings, and what do they have? Things that you like about them?
Well, so we have global alliances with Microsoft, IBM, various other major technology firms, and so what I'll say there is that it's the same thing I've said about blockchain platform before, and I don't think there's a clear winner. We don't have a preference. It's more about being fit for purpose. I do think that blockchain as a service makes a lot of sense. I think that you can find limitations in the architecture of public blockchains that don't make sense in the enterprise context. So it's probable that in the same way that we've seen the majority or quite a bit of firms, databases moving to the cloud, being offsite. It's not physical hardware that exists on location. So maybe there's a model that will ultimately win out with blockchain. Not sure. A little early to say. I think it definitely makes sense in certain applications. But I think blockchain as a service certainly, is going to be very competitive, and may ultimately win out. It remains to be seen.
Do you have any clients that aren't cloud-based now?
Well, so there are. I don't think we have any clients that have some sort of cloud capability. Yeah. I think we do have clients that for whatever reason it may be, want to keep some portion of their business as being not cloud-based.
Does that give them a competitive advantage, you think, or I'm trying to make an analog with blockchain and try to see if there's like a fit there. Maybe there isn't. Maybe I'm reaching.
Well, I would say that the majority of those decisions are driven by cybersecurity considerations. That's not to opine in any way on the how secure a cloud capability might be, but certainly layers of control when thinking about cybersecurity are very important. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was kind of a bad question. Sorry about that. You talked a lot about.
No, it's fine.
No questions about it.
Some are. You talked a lot about like the environment in the States, but like I've talked a few times on the show about how like the United States and Germany and most of the English-speaking world is a lot far behind of places like Dubai and Singapore. And talking from you guys, maybe that's not the case. Maybe, I just don't hear about these projects that are going on with, internally in these larger companies that are more, U.S. based or England based.
Yeah, so I think that there's no clear leader in terms of innovating in the enterprise context and blockchain amongst countries or regions of the world. I think that there's a very different it's a very different question to say, who has done the most proofs of concept, and then also who has the newest or the most scaled platforms, right? I think you can see news clips about someone having built some small, very, very controlled transaction on maybe a public blockchain. And that's great, and we're happy that folks are doing that, and we're helping clients do sort of a thing. But I think it's a very different question to say who's going to lead the world in terms of scale platforms. So I think you see innovations coming out of places like Dublin, Ireland. You have Silicon Ox there. You see also, of course, the UK and London, Dubai, as you mentioned. We see a lot of the actual technology theory or architectural theory coming out of places like that. But I think that there may be a very, very different evolution when it comes to building a scaled or an ecosystem of a scaled platform.
Is there a fundamental? I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there a fundamental problem with public blockchain scalability? Is that just something that I know that like right now they're having issues with Bitcoin and trying to scale? Is it just that public blockchains? There's just no easy way to do it. There's no good way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that you mean is there a problem in terms of using it for business purposes? So, I mean, I think definitely there are. I think you will be subject to costs and complexity that result from having many millions of folks executing transactions on the same blockchain as you.
Yeah.
And so I just think that yes, there are limitations, which may not be absolute, but they certainly make public blockchains often, suboptimal choices in terms of where to build something and where to make an investment. Now that may change, with innovation around consensus algorithms and things like that. Some of that may change, and I'm optimistic there too. I think some of the world's smartest people are working on those types of problems. So we may get there. Ultimately, one public blockchain may be optimal. We'll see. I don't think we're there yet. But like I say, it goes back to that whole message around there's not one clear winner as it stands today.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you have something to add, Mike?
No, just earlier, thank you. When Steve was talking about, the various regions where this is happening globally right now. And again, I think part of our strategy here at Deloitte is we've talked about being agnostic with the various platforms that we're being introduced to and asked to explore with our clients. We do the same thing with our innovation dollars, if you will, and investments. And so globally right now we have 9 different labs across the globe that we're working with. And so take, for example, Steve mentioned Dublin. That's where our RegChain product came from. There's been innovations in Tel Aviv and in other places. And then those applications from the various labs are then communicated out to and used in those geographic regions across Asia, Europe, North America, South America, and what have you, that have been very, very successful. So it appears we're hitting the globe in the right places, and obviously addressing things that if we may have missed, we'll get there as well very quickly.
Are you working on any supply chain type of applications It is so. I had a conversation the other day with somebody from Walmart where they talked about, like if there was an outbreak in E. coli on like spinach, I think, or something like that, and they did the numbers, and if you had, everything on a blockchain, you would basically take 6 minutes to get an answer of like whether this lettuce is good or bad, but if you had to do it by hand, it took 6 days.
Yeah, so not directly, neither Mike nor I really working on supply chain use cases for consumer products like that. I think the firm definitely is. We've built proofs of concept. We've dealt with some of the biggest and the best in the world and trying to help them apply that to their business. I think that there is billions of dollars of efficiencies to be gained there globally. And, it all goes back to some of the things we were talking about in our context. You think about what Mike was saying sort of illustratively earlier about the physical delivery of oil. It's the same question. What it is, that's what supply chain for us is. What that is bringing multiple parties to one shared platform, driving transparency across it, in sort of an optimized way. And so we're doing that. That's the closest thing that Mike and I, are doing to supply chain.
How would blockchain improve like oil spills or some sort of natural resource disasters?
Probably, in my eyes, we always like to think that's not going to happen. Obviously, it's a fact of life in any industry. To me, again, it's a matter of information, dissemination of information, and the ability to access that information. So I could think of a response to an oil spill being almost a supply chain type transaction, getting resources to the site, analyzing how big the spill is itself by knowing perhaps immediately how big that tanker is or how much volume goes through that pipeline that may have burst or whatever the disaster might take on. Having that type of information readily available very quickly to emergency responding entities, I think would be paramount and help tremendously. Even as we look back and potentially, some of the past, offshore oil platform spills and things, if some of that flow data had been, immediately available in a blockchain and considered and analyzed, and anomalies, quickly showing up in certain dashboards, there perhaps something like that could have been more closely, nearly avoided or potentially scaled down in its scope. But no, I think that's a good point. It's something that people don't think about. It's something I think in blockchain you always want to go for the positive and the forward-looking type applications where, how can we grow a business? But that falls in the category of how can we save a business? How can we sustain a business? Because the unexpected does happen. How can you possibly address it with that? That's a very good point.
Yeah, I think what I would add on to that is in the specific case like Mike was talking about with the oil platform, and I'll tie back in with something that you introduced earlier, Steve, is that sort of intersection and convergence of multiple technologies. And so I think that the convergence of blockchain and IoT makes a lot of sense in disaster response. I think if you have all of the existing sensor capabilities that would be downhole, and if you can detect that there's been a change in pressure or change in flow and things like that, but then have blockchain integrated with that and have that hyper availability of data to both regulators, emergency responders, so on and so forth, I think you're going to see a significant improvement in response times and ultimately the total impact of such an event.
Yeah, I can, kind of envision a world a little bit where you have these different technologies kind of merging together, and you can have the regulators look at, the minute or hourly or whatever it is, feeds coming in from these companies that are then stored on a blockchain, say maybe with like gas or something, and you can see that maybe gas is leaking, or maybe there's I think Google on their cars that go around and do mapping, they also do analysis of the air quality, and they can detect if there is a gas leak in the area. I think they actually did that in Houston, but it might be in a different town where they ran that pilot. You can kind of do some really interesting stuff where if the regulators are on the blockchain and you have different other technologies merged with that, you can just have these disasters that maybe a gas leak is a disaster, but it could become one. These things can be averted very, very quickly.
Yeah, very much so. And that, even think about after the fact of disaster happens. Imagine a world where emergency responders, ambulances, EMTs, their databases they have in their laptops they carry where they log medical information, people's names, things like that. Imagine that being available on a blockchain to a number of hospitals, a hospital system that can then route those vehicles and those resources directly to where they're available to be addressed. And now you're talking about saving lives and lessening the impact of these terrible incidents as they happen. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do like a technology that can help save lives. And I think blockchain is definitely, part of the solution. It's not a, panacea for every issue, but I think it can help out. I think, something like global warming, if there's ever going to be a solution, it'll be blockchain based, where you have the different, nations getting together and deciding, of a shared single source of truth of how to address that issue.
A lot of our key messages we hope resonate with the audience are things like think big and start small. I think it's very important, whether it's in an enterprise context or otherwise. We're very optimistic about this. I don't think Deloitte or anyone has a firm answer about where we'll be with this in 10 years. Of course, we're all optimistic. I think we enjoyed the conversation, and we want to thank you for the time too.
Absolutely, Stephen. I would echo Steve's comment here. We're obviously making a significant investment in this area, and when we make investments like this, we put a lot behind it, not just money, but people and processes and a lot of different assets. And we are really going full board. It's an exciting time. It gets us into spaces with our clients, perhaps we haven't seen before. Because we are helping them from the start and, bringing them right to the finish line, hopefully, in a lot of these things and sharing in their success, and, getting across the finish line. So again, we want to thank you for this opportunity and the ability to reach out to your listeners. And of course, if anybody has any questions, there's a whole bunch of information you can read about us in Deloitte.com, and Steve and I can be found there. And, we look forward to speaking with anyone that may have any questions for us. So thank you again.
Great. You'd mentioned a little earlier something about fellowship. Was that an educational project Deloitte has, or what was that again? Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It's the Deloitte Blockchain Fellows Program, and it's actually an internal process. So it gives us the ability internally to have a representative from each one of these industries that we've been talking about that we service to share information, successes, roadblocks, things like that, so we can help each other to advance very quickly. So I being the fellow that represents energy and resources, I be the main sounding board, both internally and externally for blockchain. So again, if there's any messaging to be done or and I also advise on event decisions, things like that. It comes from that program.
And are you a fellow as well, Steve, or no? Or Stephen?
I'm not.
You're not.
Not yet.
Not yet. Working on it. Awesome.
My protege. Steve makes me smarter every day. I will tell you that. He's a good man.
It is such a rapidly changing space. I mean, technology itself, and then to add blockchain on it, where it was thought impossible. Now it's 8 years ago, but.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
no, you're exactly right. Thank you. This has been great. We appreciate it, Steve.
Yeah, thanks. Hope I asked some interesting questions. I hope you enjoyed your time. I'm sure our listeners will appreciate it.
Great. Well, we appreciate the outlet and anything we can do to help. Thank you.
The Blockchain Show is a team effort by Steve Anderson, Heather Sullivan, Ethan Kinniconnect, and Sarah Hempling. To learn more, visit theblockchainshow.com. Ledger Wallet is a smart card-based Bitcoin hardware wallet bringing maximum protection level to your Bitcoins without sacrificing usability or control. Find the link in this episode's show notes.